and then give you time to be able to work on what it is that is going to be best for you to do in your classroom. So I'm going to go ahead and share my
Andi, can I
screen.
interrupt you for just a second?
Absolutely.
Because I don't have Nicole's memory for all of our new teachers that are in the room. Would it be okay if they just in the chat say if they're elementary, middle, or high school real quick so I have an idea?
Sure.
Thank you for doing that. I'm well aware of the issues facing teachers, but in regards to attendance, but it's different each level, so thank you.
And also a quick reminder while you guys are putting that in the chat that we are recording these sessions. And that's really just so that if you missed a session that you wanted to see at the same time, you can access those later. All right. So the purpose of our session is to, like I said, choose the best way to take attendance for your needs. And then also we're going to show you a way to easily track contacts that you make. So when you're calling home, getting all of those contacts in one place. And we also threw in at the end some ideas for engaging types of attendance. That was one thing that we got quite a bit on our survey is how do I engage these students at home? So we added that to the end of this if you're interested in sticking around for that part. So the first example you may have seen floating around at your school. We sent this out from our department early in the year. But this is more of a teacher-led tracking system. So this is not going to be a form that your students would fill out. What I have here is just really the engagement for the student. There's an option to keep more in one place if you want to be able to do engagement and your contacts for the students all in one place. But it's just really check boxes that you would click, and then these are contacts that you would make, and at the end is where you would put your information of what you did when you contacted that student. So the downside to this—
Can you zoom in on that a little bit?
Sure. So I really think the downside into utilizing this form is that you would have to submit it multiple times if you had a detailed contact for more than one student. So we'll show you a method later that might be better for student contacts. The other thing is you're going to want to make sure that you enter student names the same each time. So last name first, so that when you export it to a spreadsheet, you can easily search the student that you referenced in that long answer. But I have seen teachers just use this top part. And if I go back to my original form here, this would probably be best for distance learning teachers or younger elementary where they can't fill out a form themselves and you can mark whether they've been engaged at home or in your classroom, or special education teachers. At least those are the ones we thought that would benefit most from this type of form.
And Andi, I put in the chat the link to all of the presentations if someone would like to go into the presentation itself and just click on that link.
Okay, thanks. And we'll have time later if you want one of these forms to be able to modify for yourself. You'll have time to message me and I can make a copy and send you your own unique copy. I'll also make you the owner of it, and then you can remove me if you want to. So you're the only one with access. Okay, so this is what quite a few teachers are using in Google Classroom. So this is going to be a student check-in. The student will be in charge of doing it each day. So if you look at the top, this is what the teacher would see, and you can make this as simple or as intricate as you want. Most teachers, are going to put the date in and then just checking into class, or yes, I am here. I've also seen students that do, or teachers that do more of like a social emotional check-in. How are you feeling today? And they mark one. You'll want to make sure you turn off the class summary so students don't see the responses of their classmates. And then even though you can't see my schedule button up here at the top, you can schedule the full week to be able to, so you don't have to do it each day. You can, on e-learning Friday, schedule your entire next week and just make sure they only turn on the day that you need them. So then your attendance is done. What I see as the downside to this method is that you'll have to go into each day to check your summaries at the end of the week. Our next option is going to show you a different way to do that, where you can just look in one place for the whole week. But this is easy for students to do. As you can see, the student view They don't even have to open the question. They can just click right here on their Google Classroom page. All right, so this last method is using a Google form. I think this is most efficient for teachers who have students that can fill out the form independently.
And this works for Google Classroom or Canvas. So just kind of making everyone aware that even though it's a Google product, we're still going to show you how to bring it into Canvas.
I've seen students or teachers in level 2 have students do the same form, whether they're home or in the classroom. And then the benefit for you as a teacher is that when you go in Friday to enter your attendance, everything is on one place. You don't have to reference Skyward for who is sitting in your class that day, because you've made it part of your daily routine for them to come in and check whether they're in your classroom or at home. So this is a form, and I'll go to the example setup in just a second. And show you where these settings are and show you how to get to this spreadsheet. Okay, so a couple different options here. I would separate first and last name to make sure that you get that last name, because a lot of students are like, I'm Frank, you know me, I'm just gonna put Frank. So have that last name there. If you are in elementary or special education and you don't service, in secondary, some teachers have well over 100 students, you can go ahead and put in a drop-down menu here instead. So instead of short answer, you can do a drop-down and list all of their names, and then that way it takes a step away for them. All they have to do is click on themselves. So first name, last name, and then I did do a drop-down menu here for them to choose the class period just to make it simple for them. So the view of this from a student perspective is to come in, put my last name, my first name, choose my class period, and I'm done. I've seen teachers put in a calendar here, but I'm going to show you why I don't think that it's necessary, and just save that extra step. I'm going to come to the settings to show you some of the settings that I showed on that Google Slides page. If you're middle school or above, as I was, I would keep the collect email addresses on here. That keeps students accountable. That is a quick check. Even though their email addresses are weird and you just get their initials, you can easily check if BB is Bob Barker or if BB came up as Sam Smith and you know the wrong person checked in. So if you think they're saying, hey, check in for me today so I don't have to do it, you can make sure that they're following what they're supposed to be doing if you're collecting those email addresses. Down here, this edit after submit is usually clicked. I unmarked it. That would allow them to change their response, which I don't think you would probably need unless it's someone that has you more than one time and maybe they clicked the wrong class period. But I don't really think you'll probably need that. Same thing with limit to one response. If you have the student more than one time a day, you may want them to have the chance to enter all of their attendance at one time. But that's what those two features would do. All right, so then to get to your spreadsheet, the first time you click on this icon, it'll ask you if you want to use an existing spreadsheet or create a new one. I've already looked at mine, so it didn't ask me that question. So this timestamp is why I don't think you need to add the calendar field. It's really just unnecessary because this does automatically the day that they check in, the time that they check in. If you add a calendar, they could choose not the day they were there to try to pretend like they were there the day before. And then you would have to double check and compare the two. Here's the email address. So you can see that if this was just initials for a student, you would easily be able to see if they checked in as who they said they were. And then if you just hover over each of the fields up here, you can sort A to Z to be able to organize it by student or to be able to organize it by class period so that when you go to make your attendance, oops, there we go. When you go to put in your attendance, you can search for all of fourth period and be able to see who was there that day. And then this is what would happen if I used my calendar function. As you can see, 10-1 here and 10-2 here don't match up. So I took the calendar function off of my form. Okay, so that's really kind of what we went through here. So if you would like a copy of this, I can send you one so you don't have to start from scratch. But it's really only 3 fields, so it does set up pretty quickly.
And as we said, that same form really works nicely within Canvas. So you have two options of how to use it. On this slide, I put the really nice entry-level access point for how to embed it into your Canvas page. So in your Google form, you would select send and then just get the link, so the URL, and then go to your Canvas page that you want to put it on. So you can see the one that I have there says, click on to do attendance for October 5 through 9. Then I highlighted that, clicked on the link tool, and then selected external link. And that's where I will just paste the link. So when students have that in their page, what they will do, they'll just click on that item and it'll take them outside of Canvas to the form. They will have to log in their K-12 Google account. By this point, that seems pretty natural to them. Now, if you want to get a little bit more technical, there is the possibility to embed the HTML using the embed code. And if you're familiar with that, we can talk about that after we kind of get through this. If you're familiar with how to access the HTML, but I can show you how to do that. It's not hard, it just kind of, it's a little clunky if you've never seen it before. So this is another, so Andi showed how to create like a little check-in using Google Classroom. This is the same thing. This is creating a quiz in Canvas. And as you can see, this is just a quiz. It's one question. And it's really just, is all well as you're checking in, you know, true or false. And you can create that, and Andi will kind of go through some really cool ways to make this more interactive. But that's it. It's a quiz within Canvas that you can easily make. It's a one question quiz. You can then take that and it lives in your Canvas gradebook. Make sure you, I mean, you don't want to grade students based on their attendance. We just need a record keeping, right? So you're going to want to make sure that it doesn't sync to the SIS, so it doesn't go back to Skyward in your grade pass back. You're also going to want to make sure that you don't that you mark it so that it doesn't count towards the final grade, and you see that there at the bottom of that page. You can also use this as a formative assessment tool. Like I used to do focus activities in the classroom, and so I would just put that on there for students to participate with.
Okay, I mentioned earlier that you'd see another example of an easy way to track who you're contacting for students. So this is another Google form that's meant specifically for the type of contact being made that would be a little bit more efficient than the one showed earlier. So in this one, I'd recommend putting all your students in one place. Even if you have 100 and some students, put them all in one dropdown. That way you only have to come to one form each time you make a contact. Now, a word of warning, if you can get those students in alphabetical order before you begin, it's going to be much easier. I helped a teacher set up their form, and they had over 120 distance learners, and so they were all separate classes, and it's really hard to drag them in order. I'll show you really quickly how to do that. So right here on the drop-down menu, if I hit Add Option, and I have James Hall, if it's a short list, I can drag them pretty easily, but you can see how if you have 100 and some students, you're dragging up, and you can't see the full list. So try to get them in alphabetical order when you start. I guess I did kind of jump ahead though. On this one, I put in the calendar field or the date field so that I can quickly say which date it is. Same thing with time. Then my student is a drop-down menu, and then the discussion is where you can put your information. So the weird thing about setting up this form is usually you set up forms for someone else to fill out. This one you're setting up for yourself to fill out. So in order to get to the view where you actually input data, you're going to have to go to the eyeball up here, and it'll give you the preview, but the preview is active. So I can go in here and I can choose my date, and I can choose my time. I can choose my student. I can submit. And then I set it up so that I could submit another response right away. So that way I don't have to go back to my setup view ever again. It'll just keep looping me back and back and back. So I should show you guys how to do that. So up here in the settings, right here under presentation, show link to submit another response. That'll give you that link that I just showed you. All right, so if I go back here, whoops. If I go to responses, I don't think this page is super useful. You could use it if you wanted to, but really having that spreadsheet is useful. If you're working with a core or with a grade level, or in special education, if you're working with other teachers, you may want to choose the option, because remember I said when you open that spreadsheet the first time, it'll say, do you want to use a new one or do you want to link to an existing one? So if you look at the bottom of this, I've linked several spreadsheets to the same one so that you can see, especially for administrators, that it would be easy to go from person to person to get all the contacts in one place. But it has the timestamp and my date and my time that I did it. So you don't have to use your date and time, because this timestamp over here has like the military time. I still like having my own time. But you can easily search by student name here and find all of the information for that student that you entered all at one time.
Okay, Andy, before you hop into this next slide that just is very amusing. How many of you are already, and you can use a reaction button if you want to give a thumbs up, or you can just raise your hand. How many of you are using a Google form right now as your method for attendance on virtual days? See Cheyenne. Cheyenne, does yours look something like this? Okay.
Okay, before I go on, a couple people have dropped into the chat that you would like the form. Please let me know specifically which form that you were referring to, so that I can get those to you, and I can go back and kind of, I guess, give the names again of what they were called. The first one that I said was teacher-led tracking. So in this one, if you say teacher-led tracking, I'll know which one you're referring to. This was weekly attendance. And then the last one would be student contacts. So if you're specific, then I can send those to you when we get to our work time. And so I will go over this last part. I just think is really cool. And I wanted to share it with you guys since it relates to what we were doing. You can use both forms and slides. I know we're specifically talking about forms today, but to create your own adventure type stories or assignments for your students. And I have links here that I'll share with you guys in the chat of examples that teachers have done across different disciplines. And I think these are awesome ways to not only see that students are watching your videos and engaged with your videos, but also to give them some freedom in their learning. So if you picture tonight, our session, we could have one Google class or one Google form that says, what would you like to know more about? And we could have had each session in the pathway there as a list, and then you would go to the next section. So I will click on this link here to show you what I mean.
And really what I dig about this so much is we think often about student engagement, and we want students to have a reason to that they want to be there. So this just kind of adds a little bit of a cool factor.
So this one's really not discipline specific, but I'll show you those examples here in a second. So I just made this one. Okay, a terrifying hike. If I was hiking Black Elk Peak and I heard a twig snap, I look over and I see an adult mountain lion. So all of this could be built here. Text, I just clicked on this and that's how I entered that information. If I click on the picture right here, I can search right here, Google image search, and I looked up mountain lion. So I wasn't having to go out and do extra work somewhere else. It's all right here in the forms. And that's where I got this guy from. So this is the technical part, but it's not too tricky. So what do? Do I run? Do I back away slowly? Now you need to have a multiple choice question here. And then once you have a multiple choice question, down on these three dots, or Nicole Snowman, you can click go to section based on answer. And that's what popped up right here. So then once I have that option, it's going to just say continue to next section. until I hit these equals right here. This is add a section. So if I add a section, right now I already have my 2 sections. So I'm going to go back up and delete that one. I wanted to make sure that you got to see how to do it. All right, so I have my option if I ran away from the mountain lion. And then right here is my back away slowly option, and you can see I didn't build that yet. So I'm going to add a question there. If I change it to multiple choice, then I'll be able to make it go to section based on answer again. All right, so I hit the 3 dots, go to section based on answer. I can choose to submit the form, or I can start over. Now this is short, so it doesn't seem like it'd be a purpose to start over, but you can see that if you built a longer one, that there would be more of a purpose. So in my preview right here, I'll take this and I'll put it in the chat in case anyone wants to go through it themselves and see how it works. But as you click your answers, it'll take you to that specific section that you created. So I think the power in this is really the creativity that students have come up with. So this one that I have over here, Joey, is a math assignment. So this teacher has her students create these math examples, and then some of the students were even creative enough to choose wrong answers that made sense. And so then on the next page, it would say, oh, you must have taken the radius instead of the circumference. Try again. And then it loops them back to try it again. She also has examples of how to do peer review. So, you know, if we're in a level 3 situation and the kids are at home and they have no motivation, what a great way to get them to work together with another class. So if you have 2 separate math classes working on the same thing and they're creating these based on what you're working on in the classroom, and then they do peer review with the other class, they're doing math problems to see if the form worked right. But they think that they're just going through a form and having fun with it. This top example up here is more of a narrative example, and that's made in Google Slides, and I have how to do that here. But there are tons of examples that you guys could go through on here, and like I said, I'll try to get those in the chat to share with you, or you can just go to the links that Nicole has put out on Canvas and link to them there.